Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Zack Leader.
My name is Ben Pearce. I'm the Designated Safeguarding Officer at the Lincolnshire Football Association.
This is We Are the One, Lincolnshire's grassroots football podcast, where we speak to the amazing people who make football happen in their communities. Whether you be a coach, match official, welfare officer, grounds person, media volunteer, whatever it might be, we want to hear from you. If you make football happen in your community, we want you on this podcast. This week we're speaking to Karen Lloyd from Crosby United FC, who is the club welfare officer and also the league welfare officer for the Jack Cowson League. We are here with Karen Lloyd. Karen, would you like to just quickly tell us all of the amazing roles that you have at Crosby United?
Well, first of all, I'm the club secretary. I became the club welfare officer when the last welfare officer left, and I'm also the league, Jack Cowson League welfare officer.
Super. So what's your story, Karen? So how did you initially get into grassroots football?
Like most volunteers, it was through a child joining the club. My eldest son, who's now 30, joined an under-8s team. By the time he got to under-9s, the then secretary had left, and I got volunteered into the role. I didn't actually volunteer for it. I was just told I would do it. And it went from there, really. I became a welfare officer. It was when basically it was the old WOW workshops back in 2010, I think it was. I took mine, and I was the backup because the courses were so few and far between. There was a danger that we didn't get somebody on the course to affiliate, so I was sort of like the backup just in case they left and they wanted a course.
Got you.
So that's how I managed to become a welfare officer. I joined the Jack Cowson committee, and then when the role became available for the welfare officer there, they asked me to take that role.
Fantastic. How long have you been doing that for now?
Gosh, about 8 years maybe.
Fantastic. Good amount of time then.
Yep.
Yeah. So what is it you enjoy about volunteering in football? What impact does that have on you?
It's just, I think, being part of the community and doing something positive in the community that we live in. Seeing a positive effect you have on young people's lives, I think is the most important thing.
And what have you noticed in your time at the club in terms of that actual impact on young people?
It's definitely grown. The club has got bigger, and we're more inclusive. There's just so many more kids. We're making more football more available to more kids, and it's just great to see them all there. See where we are now, our facility that we've got at the moment. It's great to see everybody out there using the facility. So it's not just the football club, but people from the community as well using it as well. So it's great, yeah.
Super.
So, Karen, we know that welfare officer obviously is a mandatory role in grassroots youth football. But why do you think having a welfare officer at a grassroots club is so important?
Obviously, to make sure you've got a safe environment for the children. That's the paramount thing. Making sure that everybody that's volunteering within the club has got the correct qualifications, the DBS, the safeguarding, and just to make sure that it's a safe environment for children. And
I mean, you've already said that you've sort of been doing this for quite a long time now. So how has your role and how has grassroots football sort of welfare in that aspect sort of changed over that time?
That's loads. Well, when I first started, when I first became involved with junior football, it wasn't regulated. It wasn't. We did have to have welfare officers. So that was the main thing, and then it became a requirement to become affiliated to have a welfare officer. And I think it's really important to make sure that we've got somebody there to sort of like bring everything together and make sure everybody's aware of what's going on, safeguarding policies, and make sure everything's followed.
Yeah. Do you think that's a positive change that's been brought into the game?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's a lot more communication now, which is it's much more than there was in the past between Links FA and the leagues and the clubs. It's so much more accessible to get to the policies.
Yeah. And how has the general landscape, I guess, of grassroots football changed in your time as well?
I think social media has had a big effect. It's something we have to keep an eye on. I don't really know. It's
Yeah.
Do you think that social media, Karen, is having, there's obviously ways of looking at it, isn't there?
Yeah.
From a positive and a negative side. Do you think that there needs to be a better balance to find in relation to the use of social media across clubs? So I'm talking players and coaches.
I think it's difficult. With Crosby, I'm trying to get everybody to just run from one. We've got one Facebook page rather than having lots of individual team ones. It's easier to keep control over and make sure that the content on there is the correct type of content. And it, obviously that's positive, but then you've got young children, there's so many platforms now, and you've got youngsters that are constantly on the phones and on social media, and obviously there's a lot of damaging stuff on there that you have to be aware of, and it's just always evolving, something that you have to keep on top of, I think.
And in terms of how things specifically at Crosby United have changed over that time as well, how has things changed at the club?
On a welfare point of view,
just generally.
In general, loads. We were a small club. We were one of the original clubs in the Jack Carlson League, and we were gunners then, just one team. And as the club grew bigger, we moved to Scunthorpe. The majority of the teams were in Scunthorpe. When I joined, everybody was pulling in different directions, and it basically pulled itself apart. So we rebranded, became Crosby, which is the area that we're in, and we've built from there. And now we've got our own 18-acre facility. We've got our new 3G, and we've built up, I think we've got 11 teams now, plus a men's team that we've got going as well. So, yeah, big improvement from the 4 teams that we dropped down to when we changed to Crosby.
Fantastic. Do you know roughly how many players that is across those teams? Oh, no, roughly.
Gosh, no.
more than there is.
Yeah, about 150. Fantastic. Plus, we've got girls sessions going on. We're hoping to set up a neurodiverse session. We've got we're working in partnership with Rubik's counselling services, that they're running sessions from our pavilion, which is a great thing. And obviously that's bringing in mental health as well, welfare. That's something that our members can use as well as other people.
And just on that, Karen, can I ask is that something as a club you decided to do? Did you feel that, particularly your neurodiversity and your mental health sessions, did you feel that was an area that you wanted to explore, or was that something that as a club you felt was necessary?
Both, I think. It's something that's affected people within our club, mental health, and it's something that we need to address, and we need to make sure that we've got things in place to help people if they need it. So to be able to sort of like direct children or adults even to services that they can use that can help them, it's only got to be a benefit to the club.
And while we're mentioning it, so I'm relatively familiar with the impact that mental health has had on Crosby United, because I'm someone who sort of played in Scunthorpe Leagues or Scunthorpe area, so I'm aware of Brandon McGlone. Yeah,
absolutely. And we've just had one of our members have just lost a parent as well. Okay. So it's something that's it's not something that's there all the time, but it does happen, unfortunately. It's just one of those things that happens.
I hope you don't mind me asking, but what impact does that have on the club as well? How does the club come together at times like that as well?
We've had two sad, tragic losses recently. We sort of supported the child just by having a minute's silence for the parent. So all our teams that weekend had a minute's silence, just a small act, and then we put it on Facebook, sent our support and condolences to the family. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but I think it does provide that little bit, we're there for you if you need it. So, that help.
It's really interesting, Karen, to hear you talk about this, because my next question was going to be around culture. And I think there are a lot of things that clubs have to do that are mandatory. So you mentioned it earlier that, officials have to have certain qualifications, have to do certain courses. And a lot of clubs ask for our support on what do I need to have? What do we need to have? Yeah. And you go through all of those things that they need to have that are mandated. But the one thing I always want to say is you need a strong culture. it's quite a tough question, but how do you think a club goes about obtaining a really strong culture?
I think for us was finding our identity. Like I say, we were all pulling apart before we became Crosby and rebranded. Everybody was pulling. It was all separate individual teams doing their own thing, and now everybody's pulling together. We've got a clear direction, and everybody's headed in the same direction. We've got a club ethos. We know how we want to work, and and everybody's pulling in the same direction. And I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with that. And sometimes that's quite hard, isn't it, to obtain that, because walking the walk is really, really key, I think, for a lot of clubs. If you're going to have a club ethos, if you're going to have a mission statement, you've actually got to do it. What do you think are some of the more simplistic ways of clubs achieving that?
Making sure that they've got all the safeguarding qualifications in place, making sure they've got the policies and they stick to them. I think if you've got a policy and procedures, then you need to make sure you see them all through. It's no good just having policies and procedures if you're just going to have them sitting in the corner and ignore them. So we've had an instance of bullying recently, and it's like we'll give them a warning, we follow the procedure, but if that child continues to carry on in that way, then they will be asked to leave.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, because I think a lot of clubs, Karen, I find that are really tentative about following through with that, and they're we're talking about volunteers and people are a bit worried about that confrontation, but I think you're absolutely spot on to talk about if you say you're going to have something, you've got to follow through with doing it.
Yeah.
And just on the sort of the youth voice or the youth element of clubs, we obviously have a current project going at the minute around, the Big Football Ask and asking youth participants about their opinion. How big is youth voice at Crosby, and why do you think that's so important?
We're in the process of setting up a youth council. So that's something that we are looking at into doing. We've always had the older ones, we've always tried to encourage to help the younger teams, just by helping out with the training sessions or whatever, so we're like a family, and that's the sort of feel that we want to give at Crosby, is to have that family element. But I think it's important that children have a voice, because I think it'll give them confidence, more confidence, and then if there is any problems, they won't be so worried about speaking up. If they know they're going to be listened to, then obviously when there is a problem, they're not going to be worried about bringing it up.
No, absolutely. So, Karen, you are someone with a vast amount of experience, and I often get, people commenting on how efficient you are and your experience in the game. So if I've got a new welfare officer starting next season, what do you think would be some of the things that the best pieces of advice you could give them as a new welfare officer?
Communication is key, I think. You're always, that you're out there. I mean, you go around to the training sessions, make yourself available, make sure that the parents know who you are, get your policies across, get all the information that you need to get across, be prepared to be frustrated, and nothing else. Yeah, and learn. You've got to keep learning, and don't be afraid if you're worried about something. Don't be worried about phoning yourselves up and asking for advice.
Right.
Fantastic. And I'm presuming, as you've sort of gone on with your role as well, you've had a good support network in terms of the people involved at Crosby United as well. And, do you think that's quite important in terms of, for a volunteer network of people who are making football happen as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the people we've got at the moment at the club are absolutely spot on. The committee, especially, we've now got a parent committee that's doing fundraising for us. Like I say, we're hoping to set up this youth council, and everybody just gets in. We all get in and get mucky.
Fantastic. So, in terms of what are the biggest challenges that you face, not just within your role, but as a club as well?
Volunteers, recruiting. Volunteers is always a big problem, I think, for a lot of people. Recruiting the right volunteers. I I mean, when I first started, it would be, do you fancy doing it? Great, let's sort of thing. And now, obviously, we've got to be a lot more careful about how we go about recruiting. So that can be, because we don't want to turn children away. That's the thing, is we don't want to turn children away from football. And I think that's our biggest challenge.
Yeah. And why do you think, or what do you think those challenges are in terms of recruiting volunteers?
It's just, I think people don't realise how time consuming it is. It's not just, especially for coaches, well, even admin, it's not just a matter of turning up for a couple of hours and kicking a football around. There's a lot more to it, especially at Crosby. We've got no ground staff, so everybody, gets on the lawnmower, everybody marks pitches, including myself. Everybody just throws, gets in there and does what's necessary to keep the club going. So, I think it's there's a lot more to it than people realise.
And in terms of that, Karen, I think you touched on it earlier, but a huge proportion of volunteers come into the game because ultimately their children are participating in the game. And I get a lot of clubs who essentially might have an issue with an adult. And when you ask them about, how they came into the club, that's, their kid played and no one else could take on the team. Yeah. So they step forward. When you've got that scenario, what do you think clubs can do in terms of assurance when someone steps forward to put themselves forward to volunteer to either coach a team? Are there certain things that clubs could do to try and really get across that, this is what it's about at this club?
I think there's got to be make sure that they're aware of how the club runs, of their role within the club, what their expectations are, what they're expected to do, the courses they're expected to do, and how they're going to behave around the children and parents. Absolutely.
And Karen, you've obviously got a pretty unique position where you have a welfare responsibility at a club, but you also have a welfare responsibility at a league. Not just from a welfare perspective, but how do you think clubs and leagues can work in unison to make that link between the two really, really strong?
I think Jack Carlson League does quite well on communication. I think we do need to work a little bit harder on some things. I think we are looking at sort of like updating in the near future, like our websites and things like that, so we can have our policies and things on there. I'm quite often on the Facebook page, so people can contact me on there. So it's just visibility, accessibility, and making sure that people can get in touch with you if they need to.
Fantastic. And I suppose I'm going to be honest with you, I've just thought of a question off the cuff, really. So I do apologise for this, but obviously not so long ago it was Silent Support Weekend, which Crosby did a fantastic job of engaging with, and we actually saw a really, really good goal of the month submission from Crosby Crusaders under sevens, which I think was like watching like Barcelona. It was that good of a goal. But why is it important for, with campaigns like Silent Support Weekend to engage with them, or Play Safe, for example? Why is it important for parents, for players, whoever it might be, to engage with those?
The parents don't like it. I can tell you that. Yeah. I mean, most of the comments we get aren't from the children. It is from the parents. Why have we got the coaches even? We want to shout for our kids on the sideline. But I think they just need to be aware of what they are doing, and sometimes that their actions on the sidelines can affect the children. I mean, we've had quite a few problems at the moment with abusive language to the referees as well, young referees that we have to look after as well. So I think it's important just to bring home that, that what is expected of them on the sidelines. And that's a good way of getting the parents engaged, parents and spectators engaged.
Just on the Silent Support Weekend, Karen, I think you make a really good point that the weekend and the purpose of the weekend is a statement, isn't it? Yeah. And I think you're right to point out that, we're not going to hide the fact that parents are not particularly overly positive about the weekend. But, when we do our safeguarding visits to clubs, the kids always say, when's the next Silent Support Weekend coming? And really, really enjoy, that weekend. So you've got a real disparity that the kids look forward to it, but the parents not so.
Yeah.
But you're right to point out that it's very much a statement on that.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of sustainable things that you think clubs can do? Because, silent support weekend might only be twice a year, but we're not asking parents to do that every single weekend. But what are some of the sustainable things that clubs can do to perhaps build a stronger culture around their spectators at weekend?
I think obviously the respect barriers. In the Jack Carlson League, we make sure that all parents are on one side. We've now brought in a rule that clubs can only have 3 officials on the opposite on the official sideline. That helps us as welfare to be able to go in and say, right, well, they've only got 2 down on, so who's the other guy? And then we can make sure that we can check they've got all the qualifications in place. So that's one thing that we can do, and make sure that we keep bringing back the respect, codes of conduct, make sure the parents are aware of it. We always issue them out with our signing on forms. If we have any incidents, they're issued again. Just have to keep backing it up all the time.
Do you think the sort of like maybe touchline conduct is potentially one of the bigger challenges that grassroots football as a whole, not just obviously in Lincolnshire, but as a game as a whole potentially faces? Yeah. And
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think the parents realise that. I don't think the people that are causing the problems realise that.
And in your experience, what impact does that potentially have on the players?
It has quite a big impact, I think. It confuses them sometimes if they're shouting out different instructions, so it doesn't help with the development of the footballing. But also I think it can put, especially young referees have walked away because of the abuse they've had from the sidelines, and that's not good. That's just not good.
No. In terms of what the future looks like, looking forwards, What does that look like? Not just, for you, but also for the club as well.
Oh, I think we just keep building. We keep growing, definitely. We're building lots of links within the community. We're quite a diverse community. The new 3G that we've got on the old tennis court, it's not a full-size 3G, but it's oversubscribed. We've got so many people using it from the community, and that's only got to be a good thing. And we just want to keep building on that, building our the links with our counselling services and other services that the children can use, and parents, coaches, or anybody, and just carry on.
Fantastic. And in terms of that, you mentioned obviously the 3G facility. How much of a difference has that made to the not just obviously the community, but to the club as well?
Heaps. It is the focus now. That is the big focus point at the moment. The kids love it, love being on there. Saves the pitches. That's a big thing as well. Obviously, we if you keep training on the pitches during the winter, and we've got floodlights as well, so we can train later in the winter. It just made such a difference, and it saves us money because obviously we were training indoors, so we were having to pay out to other people to use their facilities, and now we've got our own, so we can bring it in house, and it's just so much better.
Fantastic. And you mentioned as well before about the club's commitment to being inclusive and to making sure that football is for all, and it sort of is a driver for more positive things that are bigger than the game. Why is that important for the club to make sure that it's accessible for the entire community? Because you mentioned it's a diverse community.
We've got an extremely diverse community, and we've got teams that have got kids from 3 or 4 different countries just in one small team. Some of them don't speak much English, some of them don't. Difficult sometimes getting across to the parents. That's a big issue that we have. We have quite a number of parents where English isn't the first language, so getting across information to them is quite difficult. And I think it's just the way the world is going now, that you have to be more tolerant and more inclusive. That's it's the way you've got to be if you want to be a positive community and a positive club. That's how it's got to be.
Yeah. Absolutely, and we've sort of mentioned this word sort of in passing, I suppose, a little bit, is that sense of community, and that's certainly what I get from talking to you, is that strong sense of community at Crosby, and that's the one thing that I always see. I mean, I'm obviously from the outside looking in, because I've sort of either know people who play for Crosby's Sunday team, or know people who know people. So I suppose a lot of what I see is that strong support for, as I mentioned earlier, with Brandon McGlone, and making sure that there is, that the club does an awful lot around mental health, and making sure that they're not just, unfortunately, should the worst happen, but, that's ultimately tried to be prevented, and offer that support network for players as well. Is that important?
Yeah, that's extremely important. I think that is the feel that the club is going for, definitely, that we're a family and we're a support group for people, especially for the young people, if they need it, that we're there. It's that accessibility.
Do you feel like that the issues, I suppose, around mental health is something that's changed, I suppose, over time as well, and is a bit maybe more prevalent now, or do you think that's always potentially been there?
I think people are more open to talking about it now. I think it's always been there, but I think definitely it's something we need to be aware of, and more aware of within our communities and the footballing.
Absolutely. And so to finish up on, so what is, I mean, I imagine you've seen quite a lot of different things across, your time at Crosby. What's that one thing that sort of stands out to you as being, that's I'm really proud of that, or I'm really proud of the club for doing that or achieving that? What might that one thing be?
I think from where we came from to where we are now, and just the way we are now, the family feel. That is, when I go out and see all the teams out on the field and on the, on the 3G, it's just an amazing feeling. And that's the buzz. It's that's the greatest thing.
It makes it all worth it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Karen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to be able to sit down and talk with you, and recognise all the amazing things that you're doing, that Crosby are doing. And I don't know about you, Ben, but I can't wait to see, what else comes from Crosby United.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.